All right. Good morning. Thank you, Aaron, for joining me today and discussing a little bit about the 4L Academy and some of your work there. I wanted to maybe start off by asking you a little bit about yourself and your role right now. Are you currently full-time with the 4L Academy? Are you lawyering for fun? What's the
It's a
what's
good
happening?
question, and I think anything I am doing currently could be on its own a full-time job. Right now, there are many full-time or at least many part-time jobs. So the day job is a lawyer working at Renault and Co. as a partner there. Busy practice working with doing corporate law, mainly with tech companies. Our firm does a ton of work in the emerging tech space, so crypto, Web3, blockchain. Probably one of the leading firms in Canada on that. And I spend a lot of my time with those kind of clients and your typical tech clients, and then a range of broader clients that have come on board over time. So the day job is that. Furl Academy is a passion project, and we'll talk a lot more about that. And that is, I guess, part of the night job, and really just growing that out and trying to find a way to integrate everything together.
So when you say emerging tech, are we talking NFTs and all the crypto and what's
All
been
that sort of
happening?
stuff, NFTs, metaverse, blockchain, tokenizing, you name it. There's a lot going on in that space, some of which people laugh at because some of the use cases are a little out there for the time being, but there's a lot of real stuff going on as well, and so many companies building really interesting things, and it's been a treat to work with some of the most innovative people in the country on their
Yeah,
new
it's
projects.
amazing. I heard that Canada had its first sale transaction, real estate purchase transaction in the metaverse. I think it was $2 or $3 million, and um, and the amount of money that's been sort of earmarked by investment funds into the metaverse or metaverse specific companies
Yeah.
is just amazing. So I think it is an area that's going to take off. That we definitely could do a whole session on that. But that's not why we're here. Let's talk about the 4L Academy. You're the founder of the 4L Academy. You want to tell us a little bit about how you decided to come up with the 4L Academy? Was there a frustration or something that you saw that just decided to? First of all, maybe tell us what it is.
100%. So Furl Academy is sort of our take on what I wish law school did and what I wish law firm training was like. So it's modern, it's practical, it's engaging training. We started for now with substantive stuff. So focusing mainly on corporate. So we've got our existing courses. We've got a due diligence 101 and a closings 101, both in the M&A context. And I say 101 in the sense that it's the first course you would take, meant for summer students and as well as articling students and first year associates, but there's nothing basic about it. And what we really try to do is do really three things with all our courses. So teach you the what, teach you the why, and teach you the how. So the what seems pretty intuitive. What do you need to know? And trust me when I say, well, maybe intuitive. It's not how most training is done, right? Most people aren't really doing a great job on that. The why is the biggest piece. How does this all tie together? Helping you get this framework in your head, this mental map, which if you're working on a file to actually add value, that's what you need. It's one thing to be told, here's a precedent, control F this, change that name. That's monkey work and really shouldn't be done by lawyers. That's easy to do. You don't have to understand anything. But as soon as one variable changes, for you to know, oh, that actually makes a difference here, 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 and here, you have to understand what you're doing. So you need to understand the why behind what you're being asked to do, why someone's asked you to do it, what the next step looks like, all of those things. And then the how is the fun part too, because it's one thing to do things the way people have been doing it for decades. It's another thing to do it in a much more efficient, process-oriented way. So we work with
Mhm.
a lot of legal tech companies, integrating that into our classes. And so you're not just learning the what and the why, it's how to do this in a modern way. And so people are coming out of our classes with so much more knowledge, confidence, and competence, but they're actually enjoying it. And I think, for example, the due diligence course I taught, like due diligence is not exactly the sexiest topic. It's not the kind of thing where you go normally, oh yeah, I'm excited to go spend 8 weeks, one night a week for 8 weeks learning about due diligence. But thankfully that's not the impact our classes have. People are enjoying them. They're really engaged. And we're trying to really embrace modern pedagogy. So this is not a lecture style format. It is really interactive and engaging. And I think that makes such an enormous difference, both in terms of enjoyment, but also knowledge retention.
That's awesome. So you're teaching the game of chess as it relates to sort of contract drafting or transaction specific work right now. And is it primarily in the corporate law field right now? Or are you looking at litigation? Is there a breakdown, let's say, to other skills like how to bring a motion, or how to draft a
Yeah.
motion, or how to draft a factum, or let's say conduct a discoveries? Are those things that are currently looked at as well, or add-ons, or where
Yeah,
are
they're
you
all
on that?
things on our radar. So when we launched last summer, so we launched summer 2021, and we had three courses at the time. We had a litigation 101 course, and then we had these two corporate courses. The litigation course went well. Some people loved it, other people more mixed reviews. And one of the things we realized, of course, is law schools, if they do a decent job of anything, it's a better job on the litigation side than the corporate side. And so you had a pretty broad array of people on that spectrum. And you can imagine, if you work at a litigation boutique, for example, as an articling student versus at a bigger firm versus in a broader practice, you're coming out of articling with a very different set of skills. Whereas on the corporate side, it's a lot more uniform, I guess. And so, we realized we needed to get a lot more niche down in terms of here's who this litigation course is for, much less by year of call or experience, and
Mhm.
much more how comfortable are you doing A, B, and C. If you're really comfortable, this course is not for you. If you're not comfortable, this course will be perfect. But myself and my co-founder Brent, we're both corporate lawyers by background. And what we realized is our corporate courses were getting rave reviews, and we knew how to build them. We had a million ideas, and we could sort of see this entire pipeline in our heads. And so the mission is to take people from law students or summer students where you really don't know a whole lot, but you're expected to do work, to getting you into a position where you can run your own files confidently. And then the question becomes, well, how do we do that in an efficient way, but in a low anxiety way, where you're not just having this hockey stick learning curve, which is what I had. And it's great for startups if that's your revenue metrics, terrible for your mental health. And just in general, when it's, slow acceleration and just vertical line up in terms of learning. So we're going all in on the corporate side for now. We're dabbling a bit in a couple other things. We got some fun stuff in the pipeline.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think we've realized is there is so much we want to do. We have so many ideas, but if we try to do everything, the quality is going to suffer, and it's just not going to be what we want. So
Yes.
we're learning some good advice, and we're saying, we're going to focus on corporate for now. We're going to build out that really heavily, and then we'll get back to some of the other ideas we had from before.
I think that's great. I think to your point on the hockey stick kind of curve of learning, the amount of anxiety that comes in when you're dealing with something for the first time, and the elements around, every matter is different. It's not just client management. There's opposing counsel management. There's understanding all the documents, the pitfalls, the ups, the downs, what to expect, and it takes a little bit of practice. But from my perspective, I guess I'm wondering, was there a hole here? Was something that derived out of some feedback with the younger lawyers that had just come out and said, hey, I just wish I had a little more support here when I needed it, in a friendly environment? It's almost
Yeah.
like you're giving them an opportunity to engage with a senior lawyer on issues and ask questions without in a stress-free kind of environment. I mean,
Yeah, that was a
that's
big thing for us, was trying to create, how do we create this judgment-free, stress-free zone where people can ask those questions that we know they're thinking, like we know they don't understand the stuff. So how do we create this environment where people can feel comfortable doing that? We use some great software, none of which we created, but it allows us to keep the classes really engaging. It allows us to understand on the fly, how much do people know, and then adjust on the fly accordingly. And what we find is we have great dialogue in class. People are chiming in, they're guessing at stuff, they're answering questions, and we're forcing them to think. And so every single person, in the class, the wheels are spinning in their head, they're turning, which is amazing. Because so often you go to a lunch and learn, you go to a webinar, you are not paying a lot of attention. And if you are, you're not really that engaged. And it's, when we launched our closings course, that one has some homework in it. So we do a bunch of teaching in a really dynamic way. And
yeah.
then there's some homework that simulates a real deal where we say, great, we've given you X, now go draft Y. Here are the templates, which is exactly what you'd be asked to do in real life. And when we were building that out last year, Brent and I were chatting, and he went, well, like, are you sure? Like, we just taught this. Like, isn't this going to be too easy? And I went, no. Like, it's easy. Things are easy to understand conceptually. The doing of it is a whole lot harder, because that's when, again, the wheels start churning. And so what we found is, this is all lived experience too. People aren't getting enough feedback in their jobs. They don't feel comfortable asking stuff often internally because they're afraid of feedback, or sorry, not feedback. They're afraid of just the reaction, whether it's from their peers, whether it's from an advisor, a mentor. And you can imagine if you're a summer student, articling student, you're worried about hire back.
Yeah,
as a
you don't want
younger
to look
associate,
stupid. Yeah, yeah, you don't want to look stupid. You're worried. You're,
yeah,
all these. Did I get it right? So you end up spending more time on it, despite the, the billable or whatever the worries in general. And
exactly.
I think that's fair. I think it's great to hear that you're kind of segmenting and say, okay, let's stick to our lane. We know this, and we can always bring people in that are subject matter experts at, let's say, a specific type of litigation.
Yep.
I know from the law society perspective, and I'm not speaking on behalf of law society, but I know when I articled, we had the skills portion of our, of our bar ads that we had
Yep.
to go and sit in classes for, I think it was 6 weeks.
Yep.
And, we had exams or tests as a result of that. And I found that I relied on those resources quite a bit. So for a couple of years moving forward, if I needed to know something that I wasn't sure of, I at least knew I could go back there and then get a resource as a starting point to go. So are you finding that as well? Are you getting a lot of calls? So you've done now 3 or 4 classes, and what's the feedback like afterwards? Is there more uptake? Is there
Yeah.
engagement,
It's a great question. So, the legal profession is not exactly data oriented, and we wanted to take, of course, a different approach. We're really trying to do this, pedagogically modern, the way
Yeah.
we do everything modern. And so we get qualitative and quantitative data after every single class. So our existing courses are all 8 weeks. They're 75 minutes once a week at night. We're toying with a bunch of different things, from workshops to boot camps to other things, but our standard one is so 8 times 75 minutes. So after every single class, the last 2 minutes, we're getting that live feedback, and it's all on an anonymous basis. So it's real data that we're getting. So we get quantitative metrics on 5 scores. So we
Nice.
know what's working and what's not working, and whatever wasn't working, back last summer, the little things, we've dealt with them. Let's put it that way. So all our classes are scoring, 9.5 out of 10 and up on pretty much every single metric,
Awesome.
which I would challenge any firm or anyone who's running training to say, I doubt that their scores would be better, but most places don't have data. And so the challenge is there's a lot of people out there believing their training is resonating better than it is. And
Yeah.
if they were able to get honest feedback, I think they'd learn a lot from it as well, and it'd be helpful. So it's tough for us to say, these things, because nobody else out there has real data. But we also get the qualitative feedback, and that's been really helpful.
That's
Some of it,
great.
we really know what people like, because you can tell in class. We've got people with their cameras on. We can see the smiles. We can see all of that. But we're
Yeah.
getting that qualitative feedback too on the positive side. And then the constructive feedback is usually around the edges. And we take that to heart. And literally, whether it's fixing up the next week's class to say, you know what, this cohort wants a little bit more of that, or the next time we run that class, iterating off it, we're really just, let's, whatever people say
So
they want, that's what we're trying to build.
that's pretty amazing that they're actually giving you that kind of feedback. There must be a level of comfort. And I'm saying this from my own experience. I did where I was a mentor for a second year business law practicum at Ryerson. And the first couple of sessions was really, how do I get them to engage, ask me questions? How do I get them to come out of their shell and, and speak up a bit? And so it really is a fine art. Like, it's not something that, as a teacher or anyone, sitting there to a quiet room is always the worst, feeling like, oh, what am I doing? So hats off to you. That's amazing. I'm glad to hear that you actually got engagement, which is good. And you must have created a sense of community, which I think is sometimes missing in the legal field. We're so competitive with each other that sometimes we don't work well together. But sounds like you guys have found a little bit of secret sauce there to get everyone opening up a bit.
Yeah, I don't think any of this is rocket science. I think, one of the challenges we face as a profession is our insularness, or it's probably not a word like that, but our lack of diversity. There's a lot of talk about gender diversity and racial diversity, which is all well and good and important. But there's another type of diversity we don't talk about enough, which is people from other professions and other backgrounds, and taking those ideas.
Yeah.
And so when we were launching, we had multiple people who teach for a living, whether it's high school, elementary school, university, coming in, because we're not experts in this. I've tutored for a decade, I've done a lot of this stuff,
Mhm.
but I didn't know best practices, right? And so bringing in these kind of people, and some of them, of course, are still on our team. Some were just consultants to start. We've got one person who's got, a decade of higher ed experience and a master's in teaching, and done all this sort of stuff as part of our core team, giving us that feedback, giving us that. And that, combined with our own sort of analysis, combined with the data we're getting from each of our classes, I think it's allowed us to sort of say, okay, what is the best practice for this? Because you can't figure
Yeah.
that out by looking at other legal education training. Let's put it that way. So we had to look outside the legal profession. But in doing so, we were able to say, great, there are established best practices for this. There are techniques for this. And also, we're remote first. So, we've built this for that world. And
Yeah.
what it means is we're not losing anything. In fact, we can run these in person. I think they'll be equally as good, if not slightly worse. We're able to do some really good stuff digitally.
Nice.
But because, we had advisors who've been doing this in elementary schools and high schools and universities for the last 2 years, there's a lot they've learned that they passed along, and that's been so incredibly helpful.
So you've been really growing the team then, so to speak. You've been adding and filling the gaps in terms of the skills or the skill sets you need to kind of add more value for the ultimate end user here, which is let's talk a little bit about, tell me a little bit about your team, but I'm more interested to hear about who you're the ideal student or participant is. Is it a lawyer that's been out 10 years, 5 years, 2 years? Where are you finding, if you don't mind me asking, where are you finding the fit?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let's start with the team. So the team is still, we've kept it pretty small for now. We had a lot of people, express interest in applying, and we were about to grow dramatically. We took a minute to pause and went, we need to just focus a little bit more first, and then we'll do it. We have so many ideas. I have so many ideas and things I want to do, so many of which are unpaid. Like we charge for our courses, but everything else we're doing, from exam prep for first year law students, sessions throughout the year, our OCI guide, which I think has been at this point read by thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, legal tech sessions, mental health, like you name it, so many things we want to do, all of which are completely free, and just really trying to drive change to improve the profession. But
Nice.
There's a lot there. And so we said, okay, let's take a step back for now. Let's get these classes going. And so what we're working on right now is training more teachers, because at the end of the day, for this to scale, for this to help as many people as we want to help, we can't do it alone. And that means if I'm teaching and building and, doing all these things for every class, it's just not going to work. So right now we're taking, for example, one of the courses that I've now taught 3 times. And I was doing the math yesterday. I've taught, I think, 35 classes over the last year just in this. So
evenings and weekends, is that right?
Evenings and weekends, yeah. So gotten a lot of experience, and it's just gets so much easier over time. So taking that next batch of people that have the subject matter expertise, expressed an interest in teaching and wanted to join our team, and saying, all right, let's get you trained up. But you've got to be ready when we go live. All these lessons we've learned, we've got to get to you before the public, comes, because there's a high expectation when people come to our classes of what we've promised, and we've delivered on that to date. And of course, we're going to keep delivering on that. But in terms of the target market, which was sort of your main question there, so really it's that, summer student to first 5 years where you need to know so much, you're not well equipped to start, and you're under all this pressure to do good work, do it well, and sort of not make mistakes, which is this impossible task because you're set up to fail. You are likely not ready for practice. Law school most likely didn't get you there. If you're at a big firm, you might have formal mentors and lunch and learns and all this stuff, but everyone's been so busy, people don't have the time, and you don't want to ask these dumb or what you perceive as dumb questions, even though they're good questions, to people, and you're not getting that feedback. We know that. We've all lived through this. There's just a lack of feedback. And so if you're at a smaller firm, there may not even be any training, right? And it's not efficient for a lawyer to sit you down and explain to you one-on-one how to do all these basic things. And so what we're finding is, for bigger firms, we're an amazing complement to their internal training. At some big firms, we are running private courses with them. So they've said, great, we've got 30 first and second years, run this course Canada-wide. So we're doing that now. That's going great.
That's fabulous. Fabulous.
So that's been great. Some firms are saying, yep, we want boot camps, we want workshops, all these things. Other firms are saying, we'll take it a little bit more slowly. We'll send a few people to your public classes, and we'll go from there. For mid-sized firms and smaller firms, it's the biggest no-brainer, I would say, because a lot of the big firms have people making, they're not cheap, who are running their internal programs. And so if a firm doesn't have that, and they're able to say, for under $1,000, we can send someone to this course. They're going to get pre-readings, they're going to get great education, they're going to get takeaways, guides, and we're usually available at the end of class to chat on a no-name basis for a little bit about real life things that they're dealing with, not files. That is ridiculous value when you think about it from that perspective. So The small firms can sometimes be a little bit harder to target on our end because you've got literally one person,
Yeah,
but the value especially to them is enormous.
is
So it's
enormous.
pretty broad, but focusing on corporate for now.
So it's not like the effects of, let's say, this great resignation that everyone's talking about, and you've got a whole cohort of solo and small firm owners that are new to the space and want to learn this area. All of a sudden, it's a mix between those to employees of firms or law firms themselves saying, "Hey, we would love for a little bit of help in this area." And
Yeah.
I kind of I can see that. I think one of the biggest difficulties as a solo small firm owner, as I was the
Yeah.
training, in the hiring process. So we at one point had gotten to a level where we were actually asking new hires to look at or to process a transaction for us and
Yeah.
provide that as a sample. And I think the hardest part and what sort of gives the individual associates the best opportunity to grow and stay with a firm is probably the training. But a lot of
Yeah.
people don't have time for that because they're so busy trying to run their own business or manage their file work or manage marketing or manage whatever it is, right? So I'm wondering if that's probably a fair assessment.
100%. I think, I was lucky to benefit from some mentors who went out of their way and devoted time to helping me on things where they weren't getting paid to, they weren't getting any credit, but that's not the average person. And I'm so grateful for those people. But the average lawyer has no incentive to train, no incentive to mentor. They have a disincentive or they're not interested. And for a lot of people, it's rare to find people with subject matter expertise who have the desire to teach and who are good teachers. We're sort of trying to corner in the market to some extent on that. So, everyone who's teaching for us is passionate about this. They have the knowledge and they're
Good.
doing it to give back. There's this, I think very strong when we were launching, talked to hundreds of people, one-on-one surveys, groups, you name it. And regardless of how long they've been a lawyer, there was a pretty consistent, I talked to anyone who's become a lawyer in the last 15 or so years, pretty consistently, they remember those early days and they don't remember them overly fondly. And they all wished, they had that mentorship, they had that training, that stress,
More
all of that,
support.
to
Yeah.
alleviate it. And so much of what we're trying to do is alleviate, the mental health impacts of not having the training you need.
Yeah.
And they are not talked about enough. And we know this profession struggles on so many levels with mental health, and there's so many factors there. But
Yeah.
it's pretty
Yeah. I get
intuitive. If
that.
you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be really stressed all the time, especially when people are expecting you to do a good job.
Especially when you're on deadline and on pressure to
Yeah.
get things done by and what you're doing affects an individual's rights, money, pocket, whatever it is, right? That's interesting. So on the mental health and mindset, do you have any targeted lessons specific to mental health or mindset shifts? Because I think
Yeah.
once you develop skill sets, there's a new level of confidence that you get, a new level of maturity, but then there's the next, and I'm just wondering what kind of courses or work that you see
It's a
in the
great
mental health.
question. So, my original preference wasn't to start with the substantive courses, although I'm glad we did. I really have enjoyed that. But there's so much more like what you're talking about, whether it's on in the mindset side, whether it's you name it, everything. If you're familiar with the T-shaped lawyer model, all that stuff across the top, process and technology and data analytics, and there's so much, that
Yeah.
lawyers need to learn, or at least modern lawyers should be learning. And so we're definitely going to get there. Where there's so many people that we've had conversations with that I think will be great fits when the time is right. So we're resisting that urge a bit on the formal classes, but my plan in general is to have a full-on mental health branch, we'll call it, all doing free stuff, zero profit from our standpoint, and really just trying to not just run events, but also try to drive some actual change, because we can have all the speakers in the world, that only gets you so far. We've got a systemic problem. And so really bringing together a group of people to think through, how do we best approach this? What's out there already? Why is it not working? And then what is our plan of attack to have to make an actual difference,
Yeah.
rather than just run programs that scratch the surface but don't get you that far. So we've got an amazing group of people that want to get involved, and that'll be rolling out later this year. And again, fully zero desire to make any money from that whatsoever.
That's awesome. So full-time work at a law firm as a partner, building that, and full-time work sounds like in the 4L Academy, evenings and weekends, keeping it
Yeah,
going.
definitely has been busy, but I mean, it's been enjoyable. I really enjoyed the teaching. It's been incredible watching, our students, our participants grow and learn, seeing their reactions, and
Nice.
also to know like we're making a difference in in people's lives, and really just trying to give back to give them what we wish we had. And I know the difference that would have made for me if I had had this kind of training, and
Yeah.
unfortunately I didn't have that. And I
Yeah.
know the implications on me from a mental health standpoint and all of that, and I've heard so many stories, and we just don't want that to keep happening.
All right. So two things in my head. One, what's a typical range of cost? I imagine that might vary depending on the course. And two, how do our listeners find you? How do people find you? What's the best way to connect? Maybe your website, Twitter,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, whatever.
Yeah. So let's start with the second one. So 4lacademy.ca is a great place to go. We're pretty active on LinkedIn as well, 4L Academy, Instagram and Twitter as well, but a little bit less active there, at least for now. If you sign up to our mailing list on the website, you'll get monthly updates and even more often updates than that from time to time when we've got events going on. In terms of courses, so we're recording this in late March. In late May, early June, that's when we'll be starting our next batch of courses geared towards summer students, but doesn't have to be. Works perfectly well for articling students, first year associates as well. Those enrollments will be opening up in late April, so keep an eye out on the website. And of course, if you're in the mailing list or following us on LinkedIn, you'll see those. In terms of cost, it's funny, when we launched, we were told, you can charge up to this amount, like a much bigger amount than we're charging. We said, like, doesn't make sense. We don't want it to be like that. So classes are priced for now at $995, like $995 for an 8-week course. As I mentioned, that's 75 minutes each week, pre-readings in advance, optional, of course, handouts afterwards. So you don't have to be taking notes during. We're available for a little bit after class to answer real life questions on a no names basis. And, we know what the feedback has been. And so, we're finding, there's no complaints. Let's put it that way. If you're working at a firm, ask your firm if they're already speaking with us. Some firms are toying with the private stuff. Some firms are going to sign people up. If you're at a smaller firm, they're probably a little less aware of it, and so some people are getting reimbursed, of course, by their firms, which is great. Our view is this really is a cost the firm should be paying for. We are providing such incredible value for the price we're charging. And really it should be the firm. In many cases that is, but we also have other people, of course, who are paying out of pocket, and we're mindful of that. So there's if people are concerned with the price, we're always happy to chat to see if there's something we can do to help them out.
Awesome. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to kind of give me, excuse me, this info and explain to us a little bit about 4L Academy. It's very exciting. You and I talked about a year ago, and it's amazing to see how you developed and taken feedback and made things better. And I'm excited to see sort of what happens over the next 2-3 years as you start to continue to grow and really develop some change for the space. I think there's a big need and a hole that's being filled by the work you guys are doing. So I really appreciate the time on this one.
Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure to chat, and I'll really love chatting about 4L Academy, and happy to do this again. I think there's, next time we do this, there'll be lots of updates that we can share. And it's been a lot of fun, and thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.